So today we're going to talk about Facts Concerning the Late Arthur Jermyn and His Family by H.P. Lovecraft. I have all sorts of issues about this story, and it's really a shame that I came off of the previous story, which I enjoyed quite a lot for its insight and its sensitivity and its tackling of topics like suicide. And then we delve into this one, so it really shows that Lovecraft was a talented author and a very good philosopher, and also held some beliefs that even at his time people found fairly repulsive. Now, he tries to excuse himself. Well, I mean, not that he thinks he has to excuse himself, but he tries to justify this story by saying, oh, some of my friends made me read stories and they were about what they claim to be shocking revelations about family. Let's assume that like a Protestant person is dating an Irish person, and oh, how this is so shocking. And he wanted to delve and show them what an actual shocking story would be. But he decides to go with, spoiler alert, someone from Africa marrying a rich white person, and how this is completely revolting. And in his case, he makes the person from Africa an actual ape. But that just pulls it even further into the iffy category. And all of his emphasis about how this person from Africa had nasty facial features and was violent and stupid and everything else. It just, the whole thing is unhappy for me to read. But let's take a look at it because it is part of the library of works. So we talk about life is a hideous thing, and sometimes when we see the truth of it, it's 1,000-fold more hideous. There's shocking revelations and unguessed horrors never borne by mortal brains if loosed upon the world. So I like this kind of discussion when it's involving, I don't know, space aliens or something else. But when you start turning it on people from Africa, then it takes on a whole nother level of wrongness to me. And I suppose I laugh because, I mean, what else are you going to do? I don't want to rant and yell about this. So it's just the way his brain was, and we are going to go through it. So, we already know up front that Sir Arthur Jermyn set himself on fire and burned himself because of what he learned. So, once again, another thing that bothers me about Lovecraft is that he tells you right up front what's going to happen. And it ruins the surprise to me. It'd be a lot more interesting to me if we read this through and we're wondering what was going to happen. But we already don't know. He's going to kill himself because what he learns was so awful. And it's just story after story that Lovecraft does this, that he gives away the ending, and then we're reading it, and the narrator doesn't even seem to be related to the family. He's just sort of reciting the history of what happened to these people. So it doesn't seem like he even really cares about them, which then, distances us from the family. It would have been a lot more interesting to me if we were reading each person's point of view and why they felt the way they did and why they made their decisions. But any case, so we have this current person, Arthur Jermyn, who burned himself after seeing an object that came from Africa. And the object has to do with his many ancestors, past ancestor Sir Wade Jermyn, who in 1756 or so went crazy, or 1765 he went crazy, but before that he had gone to the Congo, the Africa. And it turns out that, sweetie, it turned out that when he went to Africa, he met a wife, which he said was a daughter of a Portuguese trader, and he came back with her and a son. But he kept the wife in complete seclusion, and people thought that this was a normal thing. I've got a wife, but no one will ever be able to see her. I'm going to lock her in a room because this is the way that we're going to treat people. But, apparently that this was a thing that some people did back in the days. So we've got the Sir Wade Jermyn in the 1700s, who has a wife that is always hidden, never seen, and they have one son. They always have one son. That's another thing of Lovecraft. There's always one son to carry on the family line. But there's a minor exception here, but in general, one son. So they've got this one son, and this one son is Philip, and Philip is stupid and violent and isn't part of the actual society. He was so coarse that he was universally shunned. Jeez. And periods of uncontrollable violence. He was small and powerful, And he ended up marrying the daughter of the gamekeeper, so a very lowly person for a noble person to marry. And the daughter of the gamekeeper was of gypsy extraction, so not even a white person, quote unquote, but a disreputable gypsy. And then the son doesn't even stay around to take care of his gypsy wife and their son. He runs off and joins the Navy, and then he takes off when they get near the Congo coast and returns to their native Congo land. So now we've got the son who is denigrated as being ugly and stupid and violent, and all he's done was create one son because that's the purpose of the men in these stories, is to create one son. So now we've got one son, which is the grandson of the Congo explorer, and this is Robert. So Robert is handsome, and he is a scholar in ethnology. So he likes to study different kinds of cultures. So now we've gotten to, and he's not classically handsome. He's got a weird Eastern grace and slight oddities of proportions. So apparently between the gypsy and the ugly Philip, we have now gotten to a level where we have started to breed out some of the ickiness of the African ancestor / Portuguese ancestor. And this one is accepted more by society because he is at least far enough descended that he has lost some of the traits of the inappropriate ancestors. And he is able to marry the daughter of the 7th Viscount Brightholme and has 3 children. So you would think that now they have merged themselves into polite society and everything is fine. But no, these 3 children, 2 of them are never seen because of deformities in mind and body. So 2 of them are completely unacceptable to society. And they've got a second son, Neville, but Neville is singularly repellent, has the surliness of Philip with the hauteur of the Brightholmes, and he runs off with a vulgar dancer. So even the second son, who is more acceptable to society, is still not wholly acceptable. He's surly, and he has a vulgar dancer as his partner. And then the dancer dies, and he comes back with just an infant son, Alfred. So now we've got Neville and his 2 inappropriate siblings, and then the little baby Alfred. And suddenly the father, Handsome, who is an ethnologist, he studies cultures, he gets some information back from Africa. And he gets so upset by the information he learns from Africa about his family that he murders all 3 of his children, who are now adult children, because one of them's had a 2-year-old. And the adult son, who is the father of the little child that was just born, dies defending that child. So all 3 children of Robert have been killed. Robert repeatedly tries to commit suicide and then eventually dies. So all that's left is the little boy that was born and protected by his father while the grandfather was going on a murderous rampage. So one could assume that this poor little child, who is Alfred, has issues growing up knowing that he has a murderous grandfather in his past and that all of his father and his 2 aunts and uncles were slaughtered. So he ends up joining a band of music hall performers, and then even though he does get married to a singer, he deserts the singer and the son, because there's always a son, and just travels with the circus because he's fallen in love with a huge bull gorilla. And he and the gorilla are best time buddies, and they spend long time just staring at each other, and then the gorilla ends up killing him. So now that one is dead. And the only one who's left is little Arthur, who is the child of Alfred and the singing woman. And I don't think any of these women ever get names. They are just classified by being gypsy or singing woman or dancing or so on. So now we've got little Arthur at home with his nameless mother, who is there trying to keep an eye on him and to raise him properly. And it says that the family resources were now sadly slender, which is another Lovecraft theme, is that rich houses fall into disrepair and families go through all sorts of mental illness challenges, because these are the things that happened to Lovecraft himself. So, he's writing about what he knows, which makes a lot of sense. And people thought that the young child, Arthur, was had poetic delicacy and is very sensitive, and they think that this has happened because he had the singer mother and so on. And he still does well. We've gone from the stupid violence of the initial generations to now he's gifted and learned and took highest honors of Oxford and redeemed the intellectual fame as a family. He loves all sorts of ethnology kinds of research and antiques research. And at some point in 1911, his mother dies, and he decides that he's going to do some more research into his family and so on. And he learns that back in the old days, there was an ape princess who was the consort of a great white god, and all this stuff is fairly strongly telegraphed, so modern readers know what's coming here, but somehow these people never quite figured this out. So there was a great white god who came in and then married the ape princess, and then they all three went away, and then the princess's body was returned and mummified, and they all worshipped it. And none of this could possibly have anything to do with the family in question. So the youngest child, Arthur, is waiting and waiting for all these things to be sent to him so that he can look at them and explore the Congo that his whole family has always loved. And then sure enough, the box involving a lot of these artifacts arrives on August 3rd, 1913. It is brought to the room of Sir Arthur Jermyn, and then suddenly Sir Arthur Jermyn is very upset. He gets a bunch of oil and he sets himself on fire. And we're like down at the final paragraph now for the grand reveal, because no one could possibly imagine why all of this happened. And sure enough, it's because, the mummy of the ape princess looks just like all of the other family members, and because she's wearing a golden locket around her neck with the German arms, because she's, clearly the wife of the very original Sir Wade Jermyn, who had married him and run off with him. And then they say that they burned the mummy, they threw the locket in a well, and they don't even admit that this whole family line ever existed. So they were so horrified by the idea. And now the line is dead because they never have extra kids. They just have one son, which has one son with nameless women. So, again, it was just such a shame to read this story right after I read, I think it's Ex Oblivione was the previous one, involving the person contemplating suicide and what they were hoping for and all of that sort of stuff. So we go from that to this fairly racist rant about how people are judged by the way they look, and how people from Africa are violent and ugly and stupid. And you could say, well, he's referring to an ape, but clearly a lot of this is not about the apeness, and just all of the language that's used and the descriptions that are used and the whole concept, not even, let's just even go beyond the ape, the idea that, an icky non-rich gypsy woman is tainting the blood of our noble family, or this vulgar singer or this vulgar dancer, all of these women without any names at all. And one of them manages to marry a daughter of a noble person, and then all the kids they have are damaged. They have intellectual issues and physical issues. So even trying to get, and they didn't make it seem like it was a high noble. Maybe it was too low of a noble, that he only got to the little tiny edges of nobility, and it wasn't enough to help free their blood of the taint of these lowly people. So that sort of stuff all bothers me immensely, in the idea that they had to dilute the blood enough with good English blood to be able to get to the point of having someone that was intelligent enough. Or I suppose actually in this case they got some good American blood, it sounds like, from the traveling circus singer. So still troubling and disturbing. I like the way he writes in terms of creating a scene and conveying emotions, but he's doing it in the cause of issues that I am not fond of. And also, I don't like that he gives away the whole story at the beginning of each of these, and that he's doing it through a third-party narrator to create a distance when there doesn't need to be any distance. This could be a lot more interesting to me if we told it from the point of view of each of the people, and moved down through the generations and didn't know what was going to happen in the future. We were kept wondering and curious about what was going to happen, like especially with the grandfather killing their three children. I mean, we already know that all of these people are doomed and going to die, so it takes away some of the suspense that we're just being told from some third-party narrator that something's going to happen in the distant future. So those are my thoughts on the story. I guess we will see what comes next in this series. And I suppose it's good to read these things. I do a lot of republishing of works from the 1900s and 1910s as part of my getting out of copyright content that has fallen out of print back into print. And some of those works that I like to focus on are from Black poets and Black authors that have been sadly neglected, not kept in print for all sorts of different reasons. So I like when they're talking about the experiences they had, although a lot of them are really hard because they go through quite a lot of problems that are being faced by them. But then you also get works by white people that are being extraordinarily racist and discriminatory, and they don't even think about it. That's just a normal part of the way they approach life, and they are wholly oblivious to the issues in the way that they are thinking or the way that they're treating people. So I think it's good to read these sorts of things and get a sense of what some people in this era thought about other people that they were living with, if only so that we can take better steps going forward and hopefully not do this kind of thing going forward. So let me know if you have any questions about the story. I found it worth reading, but it is certainly not one that I would want to reread or to spend a lot of time with going forward when there's, even if we just talk about Lovecraft, there's a number of other stories by Lovecraft that I really do enjoy and think that show off his views on the world in different areas much better and in ways that I enjoy reading. So let me know if you have any questions.